Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Key principles of Foucault's theory in discourse analysis. Michel Foucault's discourse analysis theory illuminates the profound ways in which knowledge and power intertwine to shape societal norms and individual identities. Foucault's seminal concepts of discourse, power, knowledge, and governmentality offer a robust framework for understanding the dynamics of social control and the construction of reality. Through exploring key principles such as the relationship between power and knowledge, the role of discursive practices in defining reality, and the impact of discourse on subjectivity, Foucault provides critical insights into the mechanisms that govern societal structures and individual behaviors. This discussion delves into Foucault's pivotal theories, unraveling how they continue to influence contemporary social, cultural, and political analysis. 1. Discourse. Michel Foucault, a pivotal figure in the study of the humanities and social sciences, introduced groundbreaking ideas on how discourse influences society. His insights into discourse analysis are essential for understanding the relationship between language, knowledge, and power. Let's delve into the key principles of Foucault's theory on discourse and unpack his definition of the term. 1. Discourse according to Foucault. For Foucault, discourse is not merely about language and conversations. It is a system of representation and a way of speaking that is produced by and reproduces power relations. Discourses are more than ways of expressing ideas and are intrinsically tied to the structures of society itself. They determine what can be spoken about, how it can be said, who can speak, and the positions from which they can speak. 2. Principles of Foucault's discourse analysis. Power and knowledge are interlinked. Foucault argued that knowledge is not just a tool for understanding the world but also a mechanism of power. Discourses shape what is accepted as truth in a society and thus have the power to influence what is considered normal or acceptable. The control over discourse, therefore, becomes a significant form of power. Discursive practices shape reality. Foucault emphasized that discourses are practices that systematically form the objects of which they speak. For example, the discourse of medicine doesn't just describe medical practices. It actively shapes what constitutes health, illness, and the norms of treatment. Discourse determines subjectivity. According to Foucault, discourses create subject positions, identities, and roles that individuals can occupy. This principle shows how discourse can define personal and collective identities and thus influence the range of behaviors considered possible for individuals. Regulation and exclusion. Discourses also function by regulating what can be said and what must remain unsaid. They set limits on what constitutes acceptable knowledge. Foucault's concept of exclusion highlights how certain topics are marginalized or entirely excluded from dominant discourses, reinforcing certain power structures. Historical specificity. Foucault insisted that discourses are historically specific, tied to particular times and places. This historicity means that what is considered truth or knowledge is always subject to change based on the prevailing discourses. Archaeology and genealogy as methods. To analyze these complex layers of discourse, Foucault developed the methodologies of archaeology and genealogy. Archaeology examines the rules, practices, and systems that govern the creation of statements deemed to be truthful. Genealogy, on the other hand, explores the origins and historical contingencies that lead to the formation of discourses. By examining discourse through these principles, Foucault's analysis highlights how deeply embedded power and knowledge are in everyday communication. Understanding these dynamics allows for a more critical engagement with the ways in which information, meanings, and values are constructed around us. This critical lens is what makes Foucault's approach so influential in fields like sociology, literary studies, and cultural studies, among others. 2. Power and knowledge. Michel Foucault's examination of the relationship between power and knowledge is central to his discourse analysis, offering profound insights into the mechanics of societal control and the construction of reality. This interrelationship is not only foundational in understanding Foucault's philosophical inquiries but also in applying his theories to practical and academic analyses. Let's explore this intricate interplay and how it underscores discourse as both a product and an instrument of power. 1. Power and knowledge are co-constitutive. Foucault famously posited that power and knowledge directly imply one another. This assertion underpins the idea that knowledge is not simply a tool that individuals or institutions wield to assert power. Rather, knowledge itself is imbued with power, and power is a conduit for producing knowledge. Here are some ways in which this relationship manifests. Knowledge creates power. Knowledge is not neutral. It shapes perceptions of truth and reality, influencing societal norms and behaviors. For instance, psychiatric knowledge defines what is normal and abnormal, thereby affecting how individuals are treated in various social contexts. Those who have the authority to determine and disseminate knowledge can exercise power by defining reality for others. Power shapes knowledge. Just as knowledge can be a source of power, power influences what is considered knowledge. Power determines the acceptability of knowledge, which ideas are legitimized, and which are marginalized. Institutions of power, like the media, academia, or government, control the flow of information and thus shape public discourse and consciousness. 2. Discourse as product and instrument of power. Foucault's theory illuminates discourse as both an outcome of power relations and a tool used to exert power. This dual aspect is central to understanding how societal norms and truths are constructed. Discourse as a product of power. Discourses are shaped by rules and practices that are governed by power relations. These rules define the limits of what can be said and who has the authority to speak. Thus, discourse is a product of these power dynamics, emerging from and reinforcing specific power structures. Discourse as an instrument of power. Discourses not only arise from power relations but are also tools for exercising power. By framing the way issues are discussed and understood, discourses influence actions and decisions. For example, legal discourse defines what constitutes legality and illegality, influencing law enforcement practices and public perceptions of justice. 3. Critical implications. Understanding the relationship between power and knowledge through discourse allows us to critically analyze how societal truths are constructed and how they could be challenged or changed. Foucault's approach encourages scrutinizing the origins and impacts of discourses to reveal the power dynamics they reflect and reproduce. This critical analysis can lead to greater awareness of how individuals and groups can influence or resist dominant narratives and power structures. In essence, Foucault's insights into power and knowledge through discourse analysis offer a powerful tool for deconstructing the complex and often opaque interactions that shape societies. By recognizing that knowledge and power are intertwined in every discourse, we can better understand the mechanisms through which social realities are constructed and maintained, and potentially how they can be transformed. 3. Archaeology of knowledge. Michel Foucault's Archaeology of Knowledge is a methodological and theoretical framework that underpins much of his work in discourse analysis. This approach seeks to meticulously dissect the history of discourses, avoiding the imposition of present-day understandings and interpretations on historical data. Foucault's archaeological method is pivotal in understanding how knowledge and discourses have been shaped over time. Let's delve into the key aspects of this methodology and its significance in the analysis of discourses. 1. Defining the archaeology of knowledge. The archaeology of knowledge is a methodology developed by Foucault to study the rules, systems, and processes that govern the creation of ideas and statements in different historical periods. This approach focuses on understanding discourses within their specific historical contexts, avoiding the retrospective imposition of contemporary viewpoints. 2. Principles of the archaeological method. Historical specificity. Foucault emphasized the need to consider discourses within their unique historical settings. He argued against the anachronistic interpretation of past ideas through modern lenses, advocating instead for an analysis rooted in the original context and meaning as understood during their own time. Discursive formations. Foucault introduced the concept of discursive formations to describe the underlying rules that determine what can be said, who can speak, when, and with what authority within a particular discourse at a specific time. This involves analyzing the structure of knowledge without assuming a linear or progressive development of ideas. Rules and institutions. The archaeological method involves identifying the rules that enable and constrain the production of knowledge in different periods. These rules are not just linguistic but are also institutional and social, shaping and being shaped by the discourse they govern. Concept of the episteme. Foucault's concept of the episteme refers to the foundational thought patterns and intellectual conditions that define the possibilities of knowledge and discourse in a given era. The archaeology seeks to uncover these epistemic underpinnings that influence what is considered truth and knowledge. 3. Application and impact. Using the archaeology of knowledge, Foucault analyzed various historical periods to show how different sciences such as medicine, natural history, and economics emerged and defined themselves through specific discourses. This method allows historians and theorists to excavate the archaeological layers of knowledge, revealing how what is taken as truth is contingent upon discursive conditions rather than being inherently objective or universal. 4. Criticisms and challenges. While influential, Foucault's archaeological method has faced criticism, particularly concerning its rigorous avoidance of traditional historical continuity and its perceived neglect of the role of human agency in shaping discourses. Critics argue that this approach might overly focus on structures at the expense of individual contributions and interactions that also shape knowledge. Despite these critiques, the archaeology of knowledge remains a profoundly influential framework in the humanities and social sciences. It challenges researchers to think deeply about the historical conditions of knowledge production and to scrutinize the assumptions that underpin our understanding of history and discourse. By applying this method, scholars can uncover the often invisible influences that shape knowledge and power dynamics within societies, providing a deeper, more nuanced understanding of how discourses evolve and exert influence. 4. Subjectivity and power. Michel Foucault's examination of subjectivity and power is a critical component of his broader philosophical inquiry into how individuals and groups are shaped by societal forces. Foucault posits that power relations are deeply embedded in everyday social interactions and institutional structures, influencing and often determining individual identities and modes of behavior. This perspective offers a dynamic understanding of how subjectivity is constructed through discourse and power. Let's explore this intricate relationship. 1. Subjectivity in Foucault's framework. For Foucault, subjectivity refers to the ways individuals understand and perceive themselves, which are not inherent or static but constructed through social and cultural discourses. This process is not merely passive. It involves active engagement and negotiation by individuals within the frameworks provided by society. 2. Key aspects of subjectivity and power. Power shapes identity. Foucault argues that power is not simply a tool wielded by one group to dominate another but a network of relations that permeates society and influences identities. Discourses, systems of knowledge and power, dictate the norms, roles, and behaviors considered acceptable in society. For example, the medical discourse on mental health influences how individuals categorize and perceive their own emotions and behaviors, shaping their identities as healthy or ill. Technologies of the self. Foucault introduced the concept of technologies of the self, which are the methods and techniques through which individuals participate in the construction of their own identities according to the norms of their society. These technologies allow individuals to work on themselves through practices like confession, dietary regimes, or sexual self-identification, all of which are influenced by broader societal discourses. Normalizing power. This concept refers to the way power operates by establishing norms, standards of normalcy and deviance that individuals internalize. Normalizing power compels conformity and, simultaneously, helps individuals to self-regulate their behavior to align with societal expectations, thereby shaping their subjectivity. Resistance and agency. While Foucault emphasizes how power relations shape subjectivity, he also acknowledges the potential for resistance. By recognizing the ways in which they are subjected, individuals can resist and reconfigure the discourses shaping their lives. Foucault's idea of resistance is not necessarily about overthrowing power structures but about finding spaces within existing frameworks to subvert and redefine identity. 3. Implications for understanding subjectivity. Foucault's analysis provides profound insights into the ways in which social and cultural forces mold individual and collective identities. By examining how power is exercised through discourse, one can understand the complex processes by which individuals come to see themselves and others in particular ways. This perspective is especially valuable in fields such as psychology, sociology, and cultural studies, where understanding the dynamics of identity formation is crucial. Foucault's perspective on subjectivity and power offers a nuanced view of the self as dynamically constructed within webs of power that operate through discourse. It challenges the notion of a stable, inherent identity and opens up a rich field of study concerning the effects of societal structures on individual experiences and identities. Understanding this interplay is key to deciphering the subtle ways in which societies shape and are shaped by the individuals within them. This approach encourages a critical examination of the given truths about who we are and how we ought to behave, allowing for a deeper appreciation of the fluid and constructed nature of our identities. 5. Governmentality. Michel Foucault's concept of governmentality is a pivotal element of his work on power and its relationship with knowledge. It extends beyond the narrow confines of political science and delves into the broader mechanisms through which societies manage populations and individual behaviors. Governmentality explores how various techniques and strategies are employed to direct both the governance of states and the self-governance of individuals. This concept provides a framework for understanding the sophisticated methods of control that are both visible and hidden within society. 1. Defining governmentality. Foucault introduced governmentality as a way to describe the art of government in a broad sense, encompassing a wide array of processes that regulate the behavior of both individuals and populations. It's not solely concerned with political governance but includes a variety of controls, such as biopolitics, security apparatuses, and regulatory practices. These controls extend into the fabric of society, influencing everyday life and personal identity. 2. Key aspects of governmentality. Expansion of government. Governmentality refers to a form of power that extends beyond the state's control over the individual, infiltrating aspects of daily life and personal choices. This includes the management of health, education, welfare, and even personal conduct. The concept broadens the scope of what is considered governmental to include all levels of organization and control. Techniques of management. Foucault detailed the ways in which societies develop techniques to manage populations, statistical assessments, monitoring, and regulations. These techniques allow governments to categorize and manage people, ensuring that society operates within acceptable parameters. The management of health, for instance, involves not just medical interventions but also campaigns on lifestyle, diet, and exercise, which guide the behavior of populations. Biopolitics. A key component of governmentality is biopolitics, the management of life and populations. Biopolitics is concerned with the state's power to influence basic aspects of human life through regulatory controls on birth, health, mortality, and levels of life. By managing these aspects, the state exerts a subtle but profound influence on the welfare and behavior of its citizens. Security and surveillance. Foucault also considered the role of security and surveillance as tools of governmentality. These mechanisms monitor and control behavior, often justified under the guise of public safety and order. Surveillance, whether overt or subtle, functions to normalize behavior, making certain types of conduct more acceptable than others. Fostering agency and responsibilization. Governmentality also involves encouraging individuals to govern themselves in ways that align with state policies. This process, known as responsibilization, places the burden of governance on the individual, promoting self-care, self-management, and self-regulation in alignment with societal norms. 3. Implications and application. Foucault's notion of governmentality has profound implications for understanding modern governance. It sheds light on how various governing practices affect not just political and economic systems but also personal freedoms, behaviors, and identities. This framework is instrumental in analyzing contemporary issues such as the management of global health crises, environmental policies, and national security strategies. Foucault's concept of governmentality offers a rich, expansive view of how power is exercised beyond traditional notions of government. It encompasses a broad array of practices aimed at managing both populations and individual behaviors, illustrating how deeply embedded power is in the structures of society. By exploring these mechanisms, Foucault provides a framework for critically analyzing how societies govern and the subtle ways in which individual freedoms are shaped and sometimes constrained. This perspective is crucial for anyone seeking to understand the nuances of power and governance in any societal analysis. 6. Biopower. Michel Foucault's concept of biopower is a critical extension of his ideas on power and governmentality, focusing specifically on the ways in which power is exerted over biological life. This form of power, as Foucault detailed, is primarily concerned with regulating populations through various institutions and sciences such as medicine, hygiene, and demography. Biopower is a pivotal concept in understanding how modern societies manage human life and health at both the individual and collective levels. 1. Understanding biopower. Biopower refers to the strategies and mechanisms through which human life processes are managed by regimes of authority over knowledge, power, and the body. It is a form of power that targets the population, focusing on the body both as a subject that can be controlled and as an object that can be optimized. Foucault introduced biopower as part of his broader analysis of power relations within society, illustrating how power over life is a central element of modern political and social structures. 2. Key aspects of biopower. Regulation of populations. Biopower is exercised through the regulation of populations, which involves overseeing and controlling life processes such as birth, death, health, and disease. This management is conducted through policies on public health, urban planning, education, and welfare systems, which aim to maximize the life capacities of populations while minimizing risk and unproductivity. Control of individual bodies. On an individual level, biopower is exerted through disciplines that govern the minute details of everyday life. Institutions such as schools, hospitals, and prisons play crucial roles in this disciplinary process. For example, medical institutions not only treat illnesses but also standardize what is considered normal and healthy, thereby directing how individuals should care for their bodies. Creation of norms. Biopower operates through the creation and enforcement of norms. It sets standards of normality, health, and behavior that are used to classify and manage individuals and groups. Those who do not fit these norms may face marginalization or intervention. This normalization goes beyond legal measures, permeating the social fabric and individual self-conceptions. Technologies of power. Foucault argued that biopower uses various technologies of power, including statistical and demographic tools, to manage life. These tools collect data on populations to better understand and manage their risks and needs. This statistical approach to population management is crucial in shaping policies and practices that affect the life chances of individuals. Intersection with biopolitics. Biopower is closely related to the concept of biopolitics, where politics concerns itself with biological, existential issues of a population. This includes everything from healthcare policies to schemes for managing food supply and responding to natural disasters. 3. Implications and critiques. Biopower has wide-ranging implications for understanding how modern societies operate. It raises critical questions about the balance between public good and individual freedom, the role of the state in personal and public health, and the ethical dimensions of regulating life. Critiques of biopower often focus on the potential for abuse of power, such as when state control over biological life leads to eugenics, forced sterilization, or other forms of coercion. Foucault's concept of biopower offers a profound framework for analyzing the deep and often invisible ways in which power is woven into the fabric of everyday life. By focusing on how bodies and populations are managed, biopower reveals the extent to which individuals are subject to the power not just of laws but of norms, sciences, and institutions dedicated to regulating life itself. Understanding biopower is essential for any critical examination of modern governance and social control mechanisms. Conclusion: Michel Foucault's theories on discourse analysis provide a compelling framework for understanding the intricate ways power and knowledge are interlinked and manifested within society. By examining the principles of power relations, subjectivity, biopower, and governmentality, Foucault's work offers a profound insight into how societal norms are established and maintained. His methodologies, such as archaeology and genealogy, enable a deep exploration of the historical and discursive layers that shape perceptions and behaviors. Foucault's analysis not only enriches academic discourse but also empowers critical reflection on the dynamics of power in everyday life, urging a reconsideration of the narratives that define truth and normalcy. Frequently asked questions. What is discourse according to Michel Foucault? For Foucault, discourse is more than just ways of speaking or writing. It is a system of representation that is produced by and reproduces power relations. Discourse influences what can be spoken about, how one can speak, who is allowed to speak, and from which position they can speak. How does Foucault's concept of discourse relate to power and knowledge? Foucault famously linked power and knowledge, suggesting that knowledge is not just used to exert power but is itself a form of power. In his view, discourses shape what is considered truth in a society, thereby influencing norms and behaviors. Those who control discourses wield significant power by shaping knowledge and reality. What are discursive practices in Foucault's framework? Discursive practices involve the ways that discourse is used to manage and administer knowledge within various settings, influencing societal norms and truth. These practices determine the parameters within which discourse can occur and are integral to the regulation and dissemination of knowledge. What is meant by discourse determines subjectivity in Foucault's theory? Foucault argued that discourse creates subject positions, identities and roles that individuals can occupy. This process shows how discourse can define personal and collective identities, influencing the range of behaviors considered possible or acceptable for individuals. How does Foucault describe the role of historical specificity in discourse? Foucault maintained that discourses are historically specific, tied to particular times and places. This historicity suggests that truths or knowledge are subject to change based on prevailing discourses, highlighting the importance of context in understanding any form of knowledge. What methods did Foucault develop to analyze discourse? Foucault developed the archaeological and genealogical methods to analyze discourse. Archaeology looks at the rules and practices that produce different realms of discourse, focusing on structures of knowledge. Genealogy examines the history of discourses, focusing on how they change over time in response to shifts in power. How can Foucauldian discourse analysis be applied in social and political analysis? Foucauldian discourse analysis can be used to critique social practices and institutions by revealing how power is exercised through discourse. It can analyze how societal norms are maintained through the control of knowledge and can also be applied in policy analysis to examine how discourses shape public policy and governance. What are the practical implications of Foucault's theory in education and media studies? In education, Foucault's theory helps analyze how educational materials and curricula propagate certain discourses that influence societal norms and individual identities. In media studies, it helps in analyzing how media content constructs public knowledge and attitudes, thereby influencing societal norms and expectations. What are some challenges in applying Foucauldian discourse analysis? Challenges include the complexity of tracing the subtle and pervasive influences of discourse, linking abstract concepts to practical analysis, and addressing the broad scope of discursive practices across different institutions. How does Foucault's concept of power differ from traditional views? Unlike traditional views that see power as something held or possessed, Foucault viewed power as more diffuse, existing within the rules, norms, and practices of everyday life. His view emphasizes power as not only repressive but also productive, capable of producing reality, knowledge, and subjects.